Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Good evening, everybody. It is a windy and dark night in Tucson, Arizona. On this video, I want to get back to basics a little bit. This channel, I think, was founded on anti-orb of lightism. I don't know if there's a simpler way to say that. Basically, crossroads between where does New Age information about spirituality and communication with the other side and astral projection intersect with objective truth about life without veering into the misinformation and serious issues that overwhelm esoteric, spiritual New Age communities. So that was always the idea behind this channel. And as you guys can tell, I've been a little bit like, my mind has been preoccupied because of the whirlwind of information coming in because of the dowsing rods. And I made the last video. And just as a heads up, I don't want people watching who saw the last video to think that, I'm also going to give up on spirit communication to get info. Because, one of the things that's great about this communication is, what I'm discovering is a lot of the stuff that I've talked about on this channel since I made the channel, and a lot of my ideas, sometimes I'd be thinking of something and then this idea would pop into my mind, or this concept, and I never knew where it came from, and I'm like, this must be my higher self that is sharing with me these ideas about what the afterlife is like, and how to interpret experiences and interpret particular opinions and ideas. And then, the communication with the spirit communication began happening objectively, and I realized, well, this is the source of so much of that kind of inner motivation that I have, that when I see misinformation, like what is that voice that's been in the back of my mind, like screaming out at me, like debunk this. Don't, this is misinformation. Don't let this be the final word about what the afterlife is. Well, now I know where that voice was coming from, and that's what I had been, have discovered that I can pick up using pendulums and dowsing rods, and that's obviously goes into all the drama of the last couple of months. So, in the spirit of that, let's kind of get back to the basics and look at a post and an exchange with Jürgen Ziva on the Afterlife Topics group, and it concerns this same issue that comes up again and again, and it also relates to kind of a sensitivity that people have, that they don't really want to deal with these concepts if it means that they're going to be stripped away of who and what they are. If the ego means your personality, your individuality, your essence, if that's what that means, then I'm not giving up the ego. And if any force wants me to give up my ego, then we have to question that narrative. But maybe that's not what the ego means. Maybe there's a lot of mistranslations happening, and maybe those mistranslations get carried away by people who are kind of into this, but most reasonable people do not want this ridiculous New Age version of an afterlife. So anyway, let's begin with Karina up here. She says, for me personally, I hear words like the ultimate goal or a chariot of bliss and automatically equate that to, and to back up, the ultimate goal is to eliminate attachments, merge with God, whatever the case might be. And I equate that to basically bumping into sources of light as sources of light ourselves for all eternity. So ball of light, I'm made of light, and I am made of light, and we're made of pure love. And ooh, that's it. We don't have anything to share because we have no ego. We are not individuals. We are just positive energy and emotions, and we have no creative power. We are not creations of God. We are now just reduced back to like a primordial essence of pure bliss and love, pure, pure joy for all eternity until we reincarnate to re-experience the theater of life. It's this kind of talk, and this is what just turns off rational people who have like positive relationships with other people, right? I've seen this philosophy really get promoted by people who have, I think, some misanthropic problems in their lives, where because they don't have working, functional relationships with other people, now they basically feel like they want to delete everything that's a part of themselves and be able to remove stress or lessons or challenges in life, the things that make us grow and that we get so much reward from. It's almost like, at the worst, I almost want to say, how younger generations, or in this case, like the Generation Z crowd, is very adverse, it seems like, to self-responsibility. And I can probably say that about most younger generations, but we see that it's when we get older, or kind of like, you guys, it's rewarding if you grow and develop yourself and develop your characteristics. And we can tell as we become more mature, we look at younger generations who think that having fewer responsibilities is better. It's the old, the old man get off my lawn attitude. But I think there's a lot to be said about that. But it's kind of in that same spirit. It's like, well, I want an afterlife to just be pure love and bliss forever and ever and ever. And that's it. And there's no cosmology, there's no multiverse, there's no infinity of the universe, and the infinity of this universe, and the trillions of stars and quintillions of planets and equal numbers of civilizations possibly. Just discard all of that and just, pure orb of lightism. So anyway, so for most people, that is a big turnoff. And what I've been doing, since I first came out with Understanding Life After Death 6 years ago now, I guess, that's been the big theme, because I went after a lot of these concepts. And also I had a whole part near the end of the book, which was debunking myths about an afterlife based upon my spirit communications, typically through astral projection. So this so what do we have here again? We have, this is pages 259, actually I should say 255. Myth 1: the higher quality, more evolved the person you are, the higher, less physical, and happier the plane you call home. And this is the assumption that, the more you evolve, the less physical it becomes, the less real it becomes, right? So if you are more spiritually evolved, you're more likely to be a disembodied thing. But if you are less spiritually evolved, you still enjoy eating chocolate, this kind of stuff. Myth 2: higher planes are superior to lower planes, as if there's no lessons and great things that we can learn as we, are on so-called lower planes of existence. Myth 3: when we die, we become formless light beings. So anyway, this is what started all this, years before I made this YouTube channel, and this is what kicked that ball rolling. Led to a lot of angry reviews, angry emails, and a lot of people saying your book, metaphorically and sometimes literally, saved my life. So to continue, Karina says, so to say that that's the final realm, or what we all will eventually become when in heaven, the afterlife, whatever one calls it, that the whole bliss thing for me translates into, well, you may see your loved ones, partners for a little while, but eventually just moving off, merging back with God, back into source, and you'll forever be a ball of energy and consciousness without any sort of physicality until, well, we always miss out the reincarnation part. That's always the thing. Like, we're like that until we miss eating chocolate. Like, they actually, some of the New Agers that literally say that, they're like, you're pure bliss and love until, completely devoid of negative emotion, until one day you're like, I really miss eating things. I really miss touching people and having experiences. And then you reincarnate. Well, it doesn't sound like a world devoid of negative emotion to me, does it? It kind of sounds like the little balls of light are like, boy, this sucks. So she says, frankly, that worries me greatly, and I automatically balk at that idea, and I think others may too, and I think you're right. I think most people do. But people eat the information up because there's no other information out there, and it's all misinformation and crap in this field. and none of it lines up to any of my astral experiences now going on 7 years. I had a good one a couple nights ago with my parents and with my mom. It's just, it just never lines up. Of course, it could be my own connotation on it, but again, just how those ideas come across. So Jürgen responds to it. Jürgen says, yes, this is one of the many misconceptions some of us here are always trying to debunk. For some reason, these ideas stick so firmly into the widespread New Age religion mindset that it is quite hard to dislodge. One of the problems I have pointed out earlier in the thread is the limited vocabulary we have at our disposal to define the incredible complex and subtle nuances of consciousness. We are sometimes forced to use metaphors which can be interpreted in any way people choose. When I read the work of an Indian philosopher Aurobindo Ghose, each new term he used for which we have no word in our language sometimes required a whole page of explanation in the appendix glossary. Pops into my mind is Orwell 84. Remember, they're trying to remove language to create confusion. Well, what happens if a civilization is so expanded already that language is, back in English, it's like trying to convert proper English into newspeak. It's going to mess everything up. We are culturally deprived of the richness of higher states of consciousness and left with a childlike interpretation of reality, which should really fill us with awe and wonder. Instead, it is a sign of the poverty of our Western culture, which is almost exclusively focused on the world of our senses. And then it's kind of funny, as Jürgen talks, you can see it in action. Being too focused on the world of the senses doesn't mean, oh, I don't like sensuality. It's wrong to like to eat that chocolate. You spit that out. Again, it's coming from, and I think often with him, it's coming from a frame of having access to words and context that just repeatedly gets misinterpreted or misinformed. So when we say the world of the senses, what that really means is a non-spiritual view of life where you're gratifying senses and that becomes your religion. So, the sense of short-term fulfillment because you buy some new furniture at IKEA, and then you're looking forward to eating a meal, and meals are great. Eat some. Oops, I don't want to make the vegans angry. I forgot that always becomes a nuclear bomb when you eat some nice tofu. If you eat some tofu, you're really looking forward to the block of cold tofu and salt. And I'm kidding. How about Indian foods? Vegetarian tikka masala. Nothing better than that. How about some like jackfruit tikka masala? Okay. And nothing wrong with taste and flavor and sensation. All this is the joy of life. What happens if you have nothing to look forward to at the end of the day? Then sex, food, alcohol, drinking alcohol, kind of bouncing from one short-term experience of pleasure after another, and no deeper long-term foundational roots of acceptance, happiness, connection, beauty, things like that. And I might even have to explain to Jürgen a little bit, if you're watching this video, that, and I know English is not your first language, there may be ways that perhaps you can explain things in certain ways that doesn't bring in the orb of light religion thing, because I know it annoys you as bad as it does me. There just has to be a different way to be able to explain things, possibly, that would get the message across about what it really means, or what those Eastern teachings actually mean. I was studying and teaching, and again, not with the Dalai Lama, but by the Dalai Lama's monastery, with his own monks. And these guys, it's not, it's not this stuff, even with monks who have to give up, in a sense, certain material pursuits. They're still really connected to their individuality and enjoying, like, let's say, Tibetan butter tea. They just love this stuff, because they're really centrally connected to the environment around them. And there was a whole culture there in New Tibet of drinking like the butter tea. And it's just like really decadent thing to drink, but you go to the cafes, you drink the butter tea. My communicator with the rod says that the most positive place I've ever been to was Ganj, and the most evil place I ever went to was Los Angeles, and that she was right there with me when I was, doing the stuff with the Dalai Lama's circle, I guess, and working for the newspaper in Ganj. And I really liked it, and I really missed that. I really missed that darn place. And that's a center of a lot of Eastern thought. But even there, I never got the impression of the new orbital light New Agey religion. You could go into a cafe in Ganj, hang out with people, and talk about out-of-body experiences and astral projections with random people, and everyone's on the same page. Everyone's on a positive spiritual journey. So it really shows you the level of mistranslation that created these concepts. So again, it's not about, it's wrong to enjoy your cup of butter tea, spit it out. It's about enjoy the cup of butter tea and have a foundation of, you could call it bliss, a foundation, a bedrock in your life of appreciating and enjoying everything around you. To begin removing things from your life because it's not spiritual enough is closer to what we see as Puritanism, which is a philosophy, and that is a representation almost of what we're calling the New Age these days, is that it's going into the direction of Puritanism. Karina responds, when you mention about being a requirement and letting go of the ego identification, what do you mean? Because ego is the stuff I talked about. Ego, I don't want to give up my individuality and my essence. And Jürgen, again, this is the same translation issue. He says, we are never really close to the ones we love if our hearts are shielded with selfishness, which is the result of identifying ourselves with roles we assume and false beliefs we adopt in order to present ourselves in a light which gives us an advantage over others, including those close to us. What I noticed as I got older is that the ego issue, that as Jürgen describes it, it's not the ego, maybe even from a psychological perspective, or a part of the part of oneself that is aware of oneself, or the part of oneself that has a individual identity. People conflate ego with that, and that adds into the orbalite religion stuff, because it's like you must shed the ego and become a hollow shell that is just devoid of identity, and then anyone else can just reach in and put whatever they want and manipulate you, right? You must never show anger, and this is what spiritual bypassing, where we should be hiding and suppressing negative emotion. But that's not what's really going on. Ego is more like when we talk about somebody's egotistical, that going from egotistical to non-egotistical is shedding the ego. So egotistical means you're constantly puffing yourself up to become better than other people. I almost exclusively dealt with this in my early 20s, around other 20-somethings. And like at a certain age, I would say the majority of people that I talk to are not egotistical. So it's not like this is some pie-in-the-sky achievement. It's like if you are someone who comes into a social situation and feels better than the people around them, then that is a problem. That is really going to be some shackles around your ankles. If you come into a social situation, it's like, ooh, I want to learn from this person. I'm curious about this person. Oh, I don't really like this person. They're not, that I'm not into them because they're like, maybe they're being mean to me, but who cares, whatever. I'm just going to go back this way. Doesn't say anything about me. I don't have to dwell on it. And I'm going to go, learn from these people, make friends with these people and these people. And look, I understand some of you guys are introverts. That's okay too. But even introverts, you're going to be in a social situation. And if you're feeling even as introvert as I am greater than the people around me, or look at me and my accomplishments, I'm going to carry them around in front of me, and if anybody wants to get to know me, they better show some respect to who the man or the woman is. Big problem. And that's the issue. Now that's the basics of spirituality, is relinquishing that and being, open-minded, open-hearted to people around you, And it doesn't mean, it's not the same thing as like maybe you do belong to an organization, maybe you're a colonel in the military, and people have to show you respect to keep the organization flowing. Maybe I'm the admin of this freaking group on Facebook that's really big, and I have to show authority if people come in posting their live streams of them smoking weed. That's not being egotistical, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there, but all of us, all of us have a little bit of that egotistical side as well, which maybe also serves some purpose if we have a little bit of it or it's used in a certain way. For example, maybe certain rock stars maybe have some egotistical elements, but maybe that helps to make the music better. I don't know. But the point is that these are all mistranslations for the most part. So what happens is there's an Eastern teaching, gets mistranslated. The mistranslation becomes a dogma by Western teachers and writers, and East meets West kind of like, gurus, and then that gets absorbed by followers, becomes kind of fundamentalism, and becomes just a widespread accepted knowledge. And then afterlife info, esoteric info about our greater realities comes marching along, and there's an unholy matrimony between these subjects, and then you end up with the New Age field that I've been dealing with for so long. So the point is, the grand thesis of this video is, most people, sensible people, they're not into this. They don't like it, and if they do, they're pretending to like it. And we have to keep looking at and supporting information that is objective, because the real information does go against those particular beliefs. It's not so much, in my opinion, this postmodernist, well, maybe this is right too, and that's also true, and that's also true, and that's also true. Yes, if somebody really wants to be this orb of light, they can. Again, so obviously I'm not trying, I don't want to keep referencing the spirit communications thing. I'm just looking for my pendulum. I was going to dangle it in front of the camera, but I'm not sure where it went. Little thing, easy to lose. But anyway, I don't want to keep referencing that, but with my spirit communication that's going on, she said the people who think this way end up in what we call hollow heavens, where everyone is kind of floating around and they think they're egoless, as in they don't have an individual identity. They think they're devoid of negative emotions. They think the afterlife, everyone has to have these Pleasantville plastic smiles on their non-faces, because they might be in a state like this where they don't even, feel they should have a body, because it's all physical and it's all yucky. And she said it lasts a few months. So after a few months, people with these states of mind realize something's up and I'm just not happy and I miss what I used to be. And their peers will try to hold them back, like, no, you must stay with us as spiritual ascended beings. And then they're like, I'm getting out of here. And they end up on the astral plane, which is where most people go to, the fifth density. And, actual progression could involve going into higher densities from there, but it's the actual afterlife, not a hollow heaven. And most people on their own realize that this belief wasn't serving them at all, and it wasn't making them happy, or they were distancing themselves from their core essence. And that makes sense to me. That's always the same thing that I've theorized. I've said variations of this on the channel. So I think it's really important to talk about this, recognize this mistranslation, these miscommunications, these urban legends, the whole way that these ideas get carried away and percolate and become accepted as fact, and leads to a lot of people with a lot of anxiety. And recognize the objective and true information always tends to keep the veracity and variability of the human soul, the human experience, the human psyche. It doesn't limit the afterlife and saying, when you're on this level, negative emotions no longer exist. One person was just saying this on the group as well. Recently, it also got under my skin, because it just doesn't match up to a healthy perspective. What is a healthy lifestyle for you? Accepting and understanding negative emotions, working through them, not beating yourself up if you do feel angry about something, like, oh, I should be ashamed of this. Not living with toxic shame and living with acceptance and embracing other people for who they are. And a lot of these virtues, the virtues that lead to a healthy, balanced, and happier life in this world, are the virtues that consist of the real other side. So, the real higher planes and the real higher astral plane, which, again, through my communicator, I'm learning a lot about. It's like, basically what my communicator has been telling me is that the upper astral plane, the beautiful luminous worlds that we see, like the characteristics of it, although some of it is multidimensional in ways that our tiny mortal brains literally cannot comprehend, things that it would be like trying to explain the electricity bill to your dog. But the character, the bedrock, the foundation of it is what would make a healthy, happy, highly functional, balanced life in this world. The people who have anything that's close to balanced, functional, happy existences, where they're caring about people and they don't suffer from spiritual bypassing and toxic shame and a lot of these struggles that most of us struggle with. It's rare to find anyone who is working these things out. But the process of working those things out is actually the process of having a balanced existence and going into what we call a higher astral plane on that side. Because as you work these things out, you become more interconnected, and your, quote, vibration raises, your telepathic abilities raise, your clairvoyant abilities raise, and pretty soon you're becoming like totally multidimensional, and your mind can be in many places at once, and you're very free, and your thoughts are very open and powerful, and you start just fitting right in with these kind of higher planes of existence. Like you just slot yourself right in. Higher planes of existence which also operate in a physical and independent way from the lower planes of existence. But people on the lower plane, they can't even get into these higher planes, because if they try to, everything is just moving so fast and it's so powerful and so hyperdimensional. To them, like, it'll almost just seem like they're being swallowed by white light, that they can't see through it, and it'll just block them from being able to interact in that world. But as they expand their consciousness through having healthy and positive thinking and thoughts that are, again, healthy, balanced, not mean still having negative emotions and still feeling upset, but being able to work through those things, then their consciousness expands, and they gain more and more access to other planes of existence. So there's this connection between healthy psychology and the evolution of the types of realms that we can go to that corresponds with our, I guess you could say, multidimensional abilities. So multidimensional abilities expand as, I guess you could say, our hearts expand, not to sound corny. And this opens up gateways into other types of places that we end up going into. As weird as that is, it's just difficult to put all those things together, but denying yourself, denying negative emotions, denying your individual essence, and also in some ways completely giving up the so-called physical, saying, oh, this is lower vibe, I'm never going to enjoy this habit or something I'm doing here, or things I used to love, by misinterpreting Eastern thought. All of those things actually prevent us from moving into higher dimensional realities. I know it's a head trip, and it takes a lot to put those pieces together, and it's not fully understood by me, but at least I think I'm on the right direction. If you like this video, subscribe or become a patron or work with me one-on-one. Always happy to work with patrons for as much time as needed, at the $30 level, of course. You can join our group, you can join our classes, our twice a week meetups, all that good stuff. So all that is in the Patreon or afterlifetopics.com/university. I have a pretty cool guest interview coming up about multidimensional relationships. So be sure to stay tuned for the interview, and I'll see you guys on the next video.